Let's begin.
When I was 21, I made the poor decision to move out of my parents' house before I could afford a place on my own. It was something I'd actually planned out for months, searching for cheap apartments, roommates, and anything that could help me move out. For some reason, I just prioritized moving out on my own over everything else. After months of searching, I found a post on Facebook about a room for rent in my area. It was a 2-bedroom house, and the owner was renting out the second bedroom. I sent him a message on Facebook and got a reply in minutes. He asked a couple of questions, then sent over a document. It looked like a huge list of rules for moving in, all simple stuff that's pretty much common sense. After agreeing to all the rules, he let me come over to look at the room that same day. When I got there, I was very surprised at how clean and well put together the place was. It looked like it was a model house, so perfectly decorated and furnished. The owner, Terry, was a little bit weird, though. He was in his late 20s, but his personality and looks didn't match the way the house looked. He was wearing a dirty t-shirt and just had a weird way of talking. Still, I was blinded by the possibility of moving out that I didn't even care. A week later, I packed up a rental van with my stuff and drove it down to the house. When I walked inside, I almost thought I'd walked into the wrong house. It was so empty, no decorations or furniture, except for an old couch in the living room. It was a completely different looking place than the one I'd seen the first time. Terry was standing there and acted like nothing was different, talking my ear off about how excited he was to have a roommate. I asked about all the furniture and everything, but he basically ignored my question and just went straight to moving my stuff into the house. Being a little weirded out, I still moved in. Several weeks went by, and to be honest, I rarely even saw Terry. He was always working and didn't get home until late at night, but about a month in, I started realizing that Terry had stopped coming home most nights. It was maybe once a week I'd hear him get home around 2 or 3 a.m. He'd hang around downstairs for a while, then leave and wouldn't show up for another week or so. Part of me didn't care because I was happy to have the house to myself, but another part of me was curious about what he was up to. I mean, he wanted me to move in so bad, but now he's never here. Then one night at 2 a.m., weeks since I'd last seen Terry, I was woken up to him banging on my bedroom door and yelling my name. I got up and rushed over. Terry was standing in the doorway with sweat dripping from his head and a look of anger. "Do not leave your room," he said in a harsh voice. Then grabbed the door and ripped the handle out of my hands, slamming it shut. I stood there in shock, listening to him walk downstairs. I opened the door quietly, and after a few seconds, I heard the sound of him dragging something heavy across the floor and into the garage. I ran downstairs to see what was going on. There was a smear of mud and dirt going across the kitchen and leading up to the garage door. I tried to open it, but he'd somehow locked it from inside. I realized it was best to just remove myself from the situation and ran out to my car, driving away while calling the cops. When they got to the house, Terry was already gone, and the smears on the floor had been cleaned up. After some days of investigating, it turned out that Terry was actually renting the house from someone else, so I wasn't even allowed to have legally moved in, and all the documents he sent me and had me sign were fake. Terry likely wasn't his real name either, and as far as I know, he never showed back up after that. I don't know for sure what he was up to, but he was so adamant about me staying in my room that night. And with him vanishing afterward, he clearly had something horrible he was hiding. But what really confuses me is why he wanted me to move into the house and live with him so badly. I can't help but think that he had some sort of plans for me, and I barely got out of there without having to find out the hard way. My grandmother was a first-generation Chinese immigrant to the United States. Grandma always said I looked like my mom when she was my age, no matter what age I was. I always looked like Mom, apparently. Grandma died last year. She did well enough for herself, but my mom did even better, especially as a single parent raising my brother and me. She bought this house, a one-story space with a basement, perfect for the four of us. Grandma always watched us while my mom was at work. Grandma almost exclusively spoke Chinese. I was a bit of a brat. Once I realized that everyone at school only spoke English, I had little interest in keeping up my Mandarin. As a result, Grandma and I didn't always talk much. But I still remember her stories, Yixian, the Magic Lotus Lantern, Sun Wukong, and the Journey to the West. That one was particularly close to Grandma. I wondered if she ever wanted to return to China like the Monkey King. It was nice to be able to put Mandarin on a resume, although it may seem antithetical considering my degree is in English literature. I was the first in my family to graduate college at the ripe old age of 22. Upon graduating, I wanted nothing more than a break, so I moved back in with my mom and my brother. But now it seemed my break was going to be longer than I intended. There was less to do with an English degree than I anticipated. I was sending my resume and credentials left and right. I guess nobody wanted a little Asian Shakespeare and even frying their chicken. One night, I considered putting Smith as my last name on my resume, just as a little experiment. I was in the basement, watching a movie while emailing job applications on my laptop. I sent in my last round of credentials and checked the time. 1:02 a.m. I closed my laptop, tossing it gently on the couch cushion next to me. I reached to grab my phone off the charger. Turning its face to me, I found it was dead. I had forgotten the charger downstairs was broken. No sweat, I thought. I'll just sleep in my room tonight and charge it there. I turned off the TV. It was pitch black. Of course, I had navigated this basement thousands of times. Like clockwork, I made my way around the couch, down the short hall, up the 4 stairs to the landing, then turned left to go up the stairs past the landing. It was claustrophobic on the stairs. A wall to the left and right and a short ceiling above. The distance between the walls was only 2/3 of my wingspan. There was one wooden handrail on the right side. I placed my right hand along the smooth wood and my left hand in my pocket with my phone that bounced with each step. As my hand glided against the rail, I angled it just the right way so that it would slide smoothly off the end of the railing. But to my surprise, the railing didn't end. This gave me pause. I stopped and looked over at the rail. It was too dark to see anything. Standing in place, I kept sliding my hand up, but the end wasn't within my reach. I swear I was sober. I wasn't on anything. I hadn't even ingested anything since dinner. So I figured I was just more tired than I realized. I kept walking up the stairs. After maybe 5 steps, I had to pause again, scanning the rail with my palm, but still no end. I started to go up the stairs at a faster pace. I heard my heels hit the wood under the carpet. I must have climbed the length of at least 2 of my staircases before I stopped again, catching my breath. Kneeling down on the step ahead, I waved my hands wildly in front of me, searching for the door at the top of the staircase, or the little strip of hardwood floor that slid under that door past the top step. As I looked up, I couldn't even see the outline of light that would have come from upstairs. Where was the moonlight? I pulled out my phone from my pocket. I tried to turn it on. I knew it was dead, but I also knew that the low battery icon would flash if I hit the power button. Once it flashed, I waved the light in front of me, but it barely shined on 3 inches of space ahead. It was no use. I shoved it back into my pocket. I must have been hallucinating. Turning around, I started heading back downstairs, my left hand on the rail, one foot after the other, calmly bouncing downstairs. I knew I'd arrive at the landing eventually. At some point, I realized I must have descended more stairs than I had escalated. I paused, and my breathing started to slowly spiral. I tried to get a grip on myself. But it was at this point I moved beyond rational thought. I clutched the handrail, worried it would disappear if I let go. At the same time, I wondered, maybe if I let go of the handrail, then I'd find the end of the stairs. I had to force myself to unhand it, but I did, and I went back up the stairs, my hands clenched into fists in my pockets. Walking and walking and walking, I was confident that each step would be the one to finally take me to the door out of there. I had to stop and take a deep breath. I turned and started jogging the other way. My calves were lightly burning. I figured if I was hallucinating this, I must have looked like a real idiot, running up and down the same 10 steps over and over. Eventually, I had to stop going down. It felt like I was hyperventilating. My knuckles must have been white in my pockets. A thought came to me. If I was close to the bottom of the stairs, then I could toss my phone in front of me. It would hit the wall at the landing. Surely the sound would wake me from this stupor. Taking my phone out of my pocket, my hand shook with nerves at my plan. I hit the power button so the low battery icon would flash again. Cocking my arm backward, I gave a swift toss. The screen was almost immediately enveloped in the darkness, and rather than hearing the phone bump into a wall, the sound rang rhythmically of the phone hitting step. Then step. Then step, then step, until that sound too evaporated into the darkness. It sounded like it was still falling by the time I couldn't hear it anymore. My eyes were wide open, yet I still couldn't see a thing. After standing frozen for what must have been a full minute, I sat on the step behind me and brought my knees to my chest. My mind ran rampant with what to do next. Sleep. There was no way I could, with my heart beating this fast, try to make a hole in the wall. If this was just a hallucination, Mom certainly would not be happy about that in the morning. Try falling down the stairs? Possibly. Before I was able to even keep thinking, I began hearing what sounded like whispers. Most of it I couldn't quite make out. I wondered if it was another language. I thought I made out some words. Trip. Fall. Weak. Useless. Suddenly, among the voices, I heard my name. May. I thought it was impossible for my heart to beat any faster, but I was wrong. I felt like it was about to beat up and out of my mouth. Some of the whispers sounded like laughs. Among the whispers came another voice, a very clear sentence in a language I understood too well. Why don't you try going up the stairs again? I stood up with a start and thought I heard something behind me. I turned quickly. For a moment, I thought I could see the figure of a man on a step above me. I nearly fell backward, but the outline disappeared almost as soon as I saw it. My mind must have been playing tricks on me in the dark. Despite being in the dark for what felt like minutes, my eyes simply would not adjust. It was still pure blackness. I reached out and the railing was still there, but that provided minimal comfort. I used my other hand to swipe in front of me, just to be sure there truly wasn't anything there. The words of my grandmother came to my mind as I stood petrified. She told us the story of Guidachang, the Guidachang. The name roughly translated to ghosts building walls. It's a phenomenon where all seems normal to a wanderer, but slowly, the wanderer starts to circle back to where they started, and nothing can stop them from doing so repeatedly. It's as if a ghost is building walls to keep the wanderer in a single space. As a kid, I always wondered, why would the Gida Chiang do something like that to a poor wanderer? As I got older, the answer became clearer and clearer to me. When given the power, resources, and opportunity to torture someone, any creature will. I tried to remember everything Grandma had ever said about the Guida Chiang. Don't look over your shoulder. It was too late for that. I had turned around multiple times at this point. Look between your legs. The space is a window into the demon's world. I honestly considered this, but I was far too afraid of what I might see if I went through with it. What happened if I never got off these stairs? Would my mom and brother find my corpse here on these steps? Did I even still exist, or had I vanished from my own dimension? Would I ever see my friends or family again, hear them again, touch them again? Ultimately, I decided I would slide down the stairs. I thought about falling down, but I figured I'd break a bone, if not die. I could get on my back and slide down as if it were a water slide. It would be uncomfortable, but eventually I would hit the landing, right? I assumed the position, crossing my arms as I lay down on the steps. I took a deep breath, ready to send myself down. But just as I was about to shove off, I heard something, lurching. It hit the left wall, then the right. Soon, I could hear it breathing. It was heavy, heavy breathing. Whatever it was much bigger than me. A bear? No, it must have been bigger. I could hear it coming up the steps. It was definitely walking on two legs, despite how heavy it sounded. As it took its steps, I heard something else. Clanking. The clanking of metal, like armor or chains. I slowly sat up as the footsteps continued. At a rhythmic pace, the footsteps started getting faster. I slowly and clumsily scrambled to my feet, and I started sprinting up the stairs. I was running and running and running. I could feel my hair blowing behind me. The steps behind me kept getting faster in their own time. I didn't know how long I was running, but I was sweating and wheezing, and my muscles were on fire. Eventually, I started scrambling on all fours up the stairs like some kind of ape. I collapsed on the steps. I clutched the carpeted stairs between my fingers as I sobbed, not ready to face the hands and teeth of whatever was pursuing me. In an instant, past the sobs, I heard the words in a whisper, "Inside out," and I remembered my grandmother's words. When trapped by a Guida Chiang, you turn your clothes inside out. As the breathing down the steps grew even heavier, I frantically dragged my shirt off my body, turned it inside out, and pulled it back on. I closed my eyes tightly. The footsteps sounded like cannon fire before stopping right next to me, and the creature's breath glossed over my cheek. Through my eyelids, black turned to red. The breathing on my face disappeared. My own breathing was normal again. The cheeks that were a moment ago tear-stained were now dry. My muscles felt relaxed. There was no trace of sweat on my forehead. I opened my eyes slowly. I saw the banister on the wall across from the one I leaned against. I looked up and to my left. There, my brother stood at the open door atop the stairs, hand on the light switch, groggily asking, "Are you okay?" I foolishly looked back down where I saw my phone laying in the center of the landing. But I didn't go back for it. I ran up just 5 steps and hugged my little brother around his neck. He was surprised. "What time is it?" I begged to know. He showed me his watch, which read 1:03 a.m., just 1 minute after I'd left the couch. I scurried to my room. Though I was unsettled, I felt exhausted, and I managed to get to sleep quickly. The next morning, I turned on all the lights in the house and grabbed a little flashlight out of the hallway closet just to be safe. I ran downstairs, snatched my phone and laptop, then ran back up. I didn't hang out in the basement so much after that. I sat at the kitchen table waiting for my bread in the toaster. I opened my laptop. There was a new email from an employer. Before I got the chance to open it, my brother came in and sat across from me, preparing some cereal. I suddenly became curious and asked him, "Why did you come to the basement door last night anyway?" Something woke me up. For a few minutes I heard really loud stomping coming from the stairs. I've always loved camping, especially in the fall when the leaves are changing colors and the air is crisp. So when my best friend, who I'll call Katie, asked me to go camping with her for her birthday, I jumped at the chance. We packed up our gear and headed out to a secluded spot in the woods that Katie's family had been camping at for years. As we hiked in, I felt a sense of silence. In a good way, though, it was like we were the only two people in the world. The hike was relatively short, and when we arrived at the campsite, we both started working on setting everything up. This only took a portion of the hour, and after we finished, we decided to go for a hike. We went pretty much straight north, off the beaten path, just exploring, until we came across a faded trail. And said there was nothing out here, so she was confused. We followed the trail that wound through the woods and eventually led us to what looked like an old, abandoned cabin. It was small and weather-beaten, with broken windows and a sagging roof. Katie was eager to explore it, and I was a bit hesitant, but also really curious. We stepped inside. It was clear that no one had been there for years. We poked around for a while, looking for any interesting artifacts or clues about who had lived there, but we didn't find anything. As we were about to leave, I noticed something strange. There was a door in the corner of the cabin that I hadn't noticed before. It was very small and had a padlock on it. I pointed it out to Katie, and we both became curious. The lock looked really old, completely rusted all over. I knocked on the door, knowing nobody would be inside, but I just wanted to make sure. Katie went outside and grabbed a large rock, handing it to me. I smashed it against the lock, only taking a few good hits until it broke open. The door dragged against the ground as we pulled it back. Inside it was pitch black and we couldn't see anything. Katie pointed her flashlight through the doorway and there was a staircase leading down. We both were creeped out now, but we assured ourselves that nobody has been here for years, and there really wasn't anything realistic to fear. Led the way down the steep staircase. It wasn't very long, only 8 to 10 steps, before it opened into a room. What we saw was very disturbing and strange. There were several small mattresses on the ground along with some other random furniture. They looked very modern, though, like the mattresses had to be within 5 years old. Something about it just hit me with fear, and both of us rushed upstairs. We pushed the door shut again and stood there, unsure of what we just saw. We debated whether or not it was a crime scene of some sort because it all just looked so out of place. As I was talking, Katie suddenly shushed me. In the distance, footsteps were coming toward the cabin. They came all the way up to it, but oddly, they walked right past it without stopping. I could see confusion on Katie's face, too. As soon as they were far away, we ran back to our campsite, then right back to Katie's place. We called the police, just in case it was something to us. The fact that the person kept walking without even stopping meant that they were familiar with the cabin. We didn't know if it was due to something bad or not, so we decided to let the police decide. They searched the cabin and the area around it, but ultimately found nothing leading to anything. They said it was really strange, and even seemed like it had to be something bad, but there just wasn't anything justifying that. It ended up becoming a big thing in our town for a while, having the community talk about every possibility and theory of what the cabin was used for. The city even had the cabin torn down because they didn't want people visiting it. It still has never been figured out, and it probably never will. But there's just something in me that knows something awful happened there.
Thank you for being here when you have so many other options.